setting it up. And we are live. Hello, Vicki. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good today. How are you?
Good. How's life in the world of PPP, EIDL, COVID-19, and everything else?
It's been a little slower. I think the government is actually doing all the hard work right now, having a lot of conversations. So
About time they get paid enough.
I know. So I'm seeing all the stuff they're just dealing with and disagreeing with each other. So it's kind of slowed down a bit. So that actually, I think we all needed a little bit of a break there.
The partisans are coming out, right jab, left jab.
It really is. Yeah, it's fun to watch. But yesterday I had fun. One of our group members reached out for a little advice on, some of the programs. So I got to talk to someone live. So that was fun, getting to know someone in the group. So I enjoyed that. And now we're just kind of, looking at things, what's coming out from the government, any additional changes, as well as now where do we go next? Where does everybody go next? I think what's interesting is in the news cycle, with coronavirus, it's like one day things look good, the next day things look bad. Whether it's the virus, the economy, what's happening in different states. I mean, it's really overwhelming.
It is. It's just like, there's a lot of chaos and people are trying to bring order to it, but it's still out there. And I don't think anybody's still got a grasp or a grip on what's going to happen. I mean, we're still, with a number of our clients in very heavily impacted industries, we're still seeing that things are not going to turn around as soon as everybody would hope for those particular industries. Other industries, on the other hand, are picking up. Like we have a dermatology practice, and they're almost at 90% pre-COVID in appointments. Not only, and they've also created this telehealth model, which has picked up a lot of steam, and it'll be great in case we end up going down again. They'll have had a few months to fine tune it and perfect it, that delivery. So, I mean, there's a lot of good things that are going on for some businesses, and then things where other businesses have to assess where they are, where they potentially are going. And I know that's what you really want to talk about today.
Yeah.
So I'll let you add it.
Okay. So before we even get into that, one of the things that we reported on we posted to the group earlier today, but I did want to, bring up is that the EIDL, the EIDL loans that we've been talking about, the advances and then the loans, they opened the portal up again. The SBA opened the portal for all small businesses. So they had closed it for a pretty long time. And it was only for agricultural businesses, but now they opened it up again. So they actually had reported to Congress last week in all the hearings that were going on that they were going to open it by the end of this week, but it actually opened yesterday. So if there's, I'm not a huge fan of the loan itself, but if there's a need and, you've kind of exhausted PPP and there's still a need, and you take it business by business. But what you also might see is folks that haven't gotten the advances or didn't get it in the first time around, we're starting to see those actually come through too. So, you might see activity on an application that you did earlier, back in the March, April timeframe. And it's open again. If it's something that you missed out on, but really felt that it would have been a good option for you and was the right choice, you can go on there again and apply as of last night.
So I have two questions for that. One, what is the high limit end of the loan, or is there a loan limit?
Yeah, the loan limit is still the $150,000.
So it's still $150K.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And if you didn't get it and advanced, are the advances that are quote unquote forgivable, are they still available?
Those advances are part of this now. So it's the exact same application that they had earlier in the year, where you applied for the loan and then you checked a box. Do you want to are you interested in the advance, or whatever that sentence was? The advance is still $1,000 per employee, right? Way back when it was 10,000. Now it's 1,000 per employee, up to 10,000. So that whole process is the same. So you're applying for the loan. You have an option to take the advance. But when we were all first applying for it, we did not know that they were going to deduct the advance from PPP forgiveness.
Right.
So if you've gotten PPP and you're planning to, that's going to get forgiven, or that's the direction you're going with it, realize that if you say you want the advance, that's something that probably will just have to get paid back.
Right, so that's one negative.
You might want to look at that differently this time, yeah.
Right, so that's one negative. And one of the other negatives that we saw was, a couple of the negatives, just to rehash this for everybody, was one, the limitations or restrictions on distributions to owners. The funds can't be used for that. 2 or 3, the third big one is the requirement to have CPA reviewed financials at the end of the year or on an annual basis, which provides or creates another cost associated with this that could be anywhere from $1,500 to $5,000.
And even, yeah, so it's, and just so you have this, you absolutely have to submit financial statements to the SBA every year by March, I think it is. And then they can request CPA reviewed financials.
Oh, so it's not a requirement.
It's a may. That got clarified for me later on, that it's a may.
It's a may, okay.
Right. But what it creates this requirement for a whole nother level of financial management. So if you're like a small business where, you usually go on extension for your taxes, and, maybe you're not perfectly tracking you really need to get to the next level of financial management, both for the submission of the financials and the possibility that, there'll be a trigger that'll say these need to be CPA reviewed, and you have to be ready to go. So essentially you have to really be managing everything at a different level. So we're really just, I would only take that loan if it was the difference between the business failing or not. I wouldn't take it as this, this is a gift type of a thing. You got to really think it through before taking it, because it is it's debt. So, yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off. I didn't mean to cut you off on that, but it changes it's that they definitely are going to be looking at your financials every year, and the level of it is, it can depend, but that can be a completely new cost and requirement to smaller businesses that they're just not used to, especially when they've only had.
If you're the business owner that doesn't reconcile every month or stay on top of reconciliation,
right, exactly,
or you're not even using a financial application and you're doing everything in a ledger book or on the back of a napkin, this is going to be very hard for you to track and to meet all the covenants and the requirements that are written into the EIDL loan for financial management. So you're going to have to change. I mean, we recommend nobody be doing that. Nobody be keeping stuff on the back of a napkin, or in today's world, there's so many options out there at all different price points that keeping things with pen and paper doesn't cut it anymore. You get a lot more advantage and a lot more capability and robustness if you use just any of the online applications. But outside of that, you should be reconciling every month and completing the reconciliations. I mean, we, as you know, our accounting department teams reconcile all of our clients' bank accounts, credit card accounts twice a month. We do an interim reconciliation and then a month-end reconciliation. Picks up a lot of things that may end up being missed at a month-end reconciliation or being delayed to be seen until a month-end reconciliation. So you just have to be aware, like Vicki's saying, of the increased scrutiny that you potentially will get, which will cause increased action steps that you're going to have to take.
Right. And you have to be able to show exactly how the funds were used. So were we all with PPP, we're saying put it in a separate account and, you know, really track every dollar going out the door. This is the same thing. So
yeah, that just adds another account that they got to reconcile.
100%. Definitely. So what was funny is when you see, so I always sometimes I'll see on, you know, some of these headlines I'll get on Twitter before I see it anywhere else. And you see some of the comments and some people are like, yay, I can get an EIDL loan. And then others are commenting, why would I want to go into business with the SBA? You know, and it's kind of a good way to look at it because essentially that's what it is. They're giving you money and they want to know to the dollar where it's going and that it's not going to you personally, that it's only managing the specific types of expenses in the business. So
they become your silent partner, but only
they do
until they want to scrutinize
until they want to audit you. Which
right, exactly, and put you on the rack and stretch you.
The partner that's adding no value.
Exactly.
So then the other thing that what's actually happening now is for most businesses that got the PPP early on, and as the weeks go by, everyone's really starting to exhaust those PPP funds. And PPP, in a good way, came out very quickly and was able to kind of like salvage things for businesses where, as we know, restaurants and salons had to lay off right away. But there was many, obviously there was a lot of industries that were able to carry themselves for a couple of weeks and then PPP kicked in. So now we're getting to that 8-week time frame for the folks that did it right, kept people on board, right? Or maybe they get a couple of extra weeks, they used it for rent and some of those other things it was allowed for. But now PPP funds are exhausted, right? So let's say you're a business, you did all the right things, and now you've gone through your PPP.
And your revenues are still less than 50% of norm.
Right. The economy is not back to normal by any means. What do you do now? So that's what we really...
Here you have.
The federal government is coming out and saying, this is going to be a longer recovery than we thought. Like we said earlier, one minute you see the stock market exploding, the next day it's down, so it's kind of we're not really sure where this is going. But most businesses are still affected. The majority of businesses are still affected in some way. So how do you protect yourself now going forward? What did we learn from this? What did we learn from those feelings of what am I going to do and of desperation before we got PPP? What do you need to do now? So two things. First, on the personal side, you're seeing every personal finance guru talk about, having an emergency fund, right? Everyone should have an emergency fund. And I think that most people are taking that a heck of a lot more seriously now than they used to, right? It was a nice to have before. Now you realize like this is critical to have an emergency fund. So in your business, you need the same thing. So regardless of where you are right now, you need to be building that emergency fund. So, there's no magic number, but some numbers that you see out there, right? Where, in our circles of the CFO, CPA world, people will recommend 10% of revenue, right? Your $1 million business, you're doing $1 million a year, $100,000 should be in the bank, put aside. That's not a line of credit. That's not loan, nothing, no lending involved, true cash that you can pull out in a case of emergency. Some people look at it as, well, you need 2 months of operating expenses at the least, right? So let's say you spend $20,000 a month on operating expenses, some payroll, rent, right? At least $40,000 in the bank. These are pretty big numbers. But if revenue dries up or is reduced by 50%, which is considerable, where do you pull from without going in more debt? So I think everyone, there's no magic number, there's no solution, in the moment, but you need to be working towards those safety nets because hopefully we're going to see recovery now, but we don't know when this can happen again. And that's something that's an easy goal to have, that on a monthly basis, I see if I have some profit in my business, I'm going to put it aside. I'm going to build up that emergency savings account so that if something like this happened again, I can pull from it. And then the other piece of it is, okay, so PPP enabled us to keep employees on board, right? So it saved a lot of businesses from having to lay people off. They specifically didn't want you to lay people off. So it was set up so that you kept your employees. But now, again, PPP now is exhausted and you're down in revenue. And what do you do? How do you assess, how many employees you can really afford? So again, not a magic number, but what I like to use is a metric of, for every 250,000 of revenue, maybe say 200 to 250, you can afford an employee. So if you are an employee of your business, you're one of those people. So $1 million company with the owner, working in the business, $1 million company can afford 4 people, essentially.
And the owner being one of them.
The owner being one of them. And when you think about it, if you were a business making 250,000, you probably could only afford yourself, right? So it makes sense when you lay it out. If you were doing $1 million in revenue and now you're doing 750,000 in revenue, and your projection is to be at that level, right? That probably means that you need to let somebody go, right? So now a $750,000 business can afford you and 2 more people. It's a very good gauge, and I've seen it work I've yet to not see it work. Where that, especially when you're in professional services and you're in, maybe not like a retail store, it might be a little different, but overall overarching rule of thumb, right? So as you're, kind of coming out of PPP and saying, I have this staff, this is where I think I'm going to be, for the rest of the year revenue wise. It's something that it's a hard decisions, but the numbers could definitely support that. You might have to do something from a staffing perspective now that you didn't have to do earlier in this.
That opens up another can of worms. And that can of worms is, do you have the systems and processes in place to let these people go if you need to, and the work can be allocated or pushed off or delegated to somebody else? If you don't have the systems and processes, you're going to have absolute chaos in your business, because you might not have things set up where you've got one person doing, most businesses probably have one employee doing certain things. There's no cross-train, providing certain services or, work, no cross-training with anybody else in the company. So when that person goes, you feel, oh my God, I can't let that person go because I'm so tied into them and I'm so dependent on them. So it gets into a lot of the stuff that we talk about where it's independence versus dependence. Is your business dependent on you as a business owner? Is your business dependent on any particular vendor that provides you your services or materials or supplies? Are you reliant or dependent on any one customer or client? And in this case, are you reliant or dependent on any one or group of employees that basically they're not intentionally doing it, but you're letting them hold you hostage as the business owner. So you've got to get those systems and processes in place, get people cross-trained so that you might see that you might only need one employee for every $300,000 worth of revenue. And therefore you've got more profit and more money to put in for reserves to cover a situation like this, to be at 4 months. So, you got me going here.
I know, but and when you think about that, it's like PPP enabled businesses to kick the can down the road, right? So it was like, as revenue was decreasing, as all these things were happening, it's like
not our clients.
It's like we're seeing out there, it was a safety net with a wish and a prayer that in 8 weeks this was going to be over. And no one was, and people weren't putting enough thought into how do I need to just change my business, how I'm running my business. I mean, just everything. So now it's like that money's gone. And if you haven't made those changes, you need to be doing it now so that, you know, you can get yourself into a better position regardless of what happens. You know, you shouldn't have to be watching the news every day. Like, is it bad news? Is it bad news?
Right.
To know where, you know, where your livelihood's coming from, you know?
You got to take control of your business. And a lot of this goes into what we talk about, where we want to optimize the CEO or the business owner. We want them to become the uppercase CEO, not the lowercase CEO or the chief everything officer. So that plays right into part of our process that we work with our clients to develop. So it's things that business owners, either they don't know to do them, they're not sure how to do them, or they don't want to do them. Business owners that we have problems with are the ones that don't want to do those things, that aren't willing to hold themselves accountable or hold their team members accountable or hold their people accountable. So you got to, as a business owner, you've got a lot of responsibilities. You get a lot of advantages and benefits, but there are responsibilities. In reality, you're a fiduciary not only to your employees, but to you as an owner. You're the CEO, but you're also the owner. And sometimes there's two very different paths that you need to take. And you got, as the owner, you've got to hold the CEO accountable and hold yourself accountable. Systems and processes, dependence versus independence, focus, clarity. Those are things that you need to be looking at all times to improve your business. So I think it's great that you started going down this path. It gave me a chance to get up and start pontificating a little bit, but where I'm not just the Oliver North attorney, the potted plant, just I'm here to shake my...
Well, you know, it's like, I think we've talked about this stuff through this time period, but I think that, you know, it's still that people had money in the bank, they had PPP, they had the safety net. So now, you know, things are changing, and they're changing rapidly. So, I mean, the takeaway for everyone is, you know, on top of what you were saying with the dependent, I mean, those are some big things to really think about. The, you know, kind of the quick wins is get yourself on a path for cash reserve.
Right.
Take that very seriously. And if you see no way to possibly put money aside, there's a problem. That's a problem in itself. Right. Look at your staff, look at productivity, right? And then see where you can audit, if you need to let somebody go, how you can automate, systematize, you know, because you should never be reliant on anyone. So.
Right. And we all know every function of a business should not be in a silo. You have to look at your business from up above. It's kind of like when I was a kid and I went to Redskin games. I loved sitting in the first row of the upper deck so that I could look down and watch the whole play develop. Whereas if I was down low, I would only see bits and pieces and I couldn't see the whole play develop. So it's the same thing here. You've got to be able, as the business owner, to see your business from a 360-degree view and realize that all these parts are moving together and part of a machinery, a piece of machinery that has to be in sync with one another. So going to find out whether you can let somebody go, whether you have systems and processes in place, what reserves should you have? You got to look at your cash projections. So it all ties back into each other, and you can't be in silos. And it's just sometimes people are very narrowly focused and have blinders on, and they're looking at everything in silos, and you can't. Right. At different times, as you know, different times of a business's life cycle, there are different things that are important. And so therefore, it's not that everything isn't important, but some things are primary, but that shifts based on where you are in your business life cycle. And right now we've got, everybody's pretty much in the same portion of their business life cycle, survive. We still got to survive. You still, as a business owner, got to survive. So you've got to take the steps that a surviving business needs to take. Get your cash flow stabilized, get your expenses under control, constantly be evaluating your numbers. As we say, know your numbers, know your business. So you've got to have those things down pat, and that comes with being the uppercase CEO and not the chief everything officer where you're doing it all. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Oh, yes, that was good. Very good.
Do this on these episodes. I like that.
Yeah, very good. That's all I got.
As you all know, Vicki usually keeps me under wraps.
Oh, that's so funny. No, that's all I have for today. I think that's all I have for today. I think that's probably enough for everybody.
All right. Well, thank you, Vicki, for keeping us all posted, and we'll see everybody next week.
Yep.
Stay safe and be well, all.
Yes. Bye-bye, everybody.